Okay, perfect. Well, as people come in, I'm going to introduce myself and also the other members of the Artist Impact Coalition and our Committee for Dismantling Racism that is hosting this. My name is Erica Wall, and I'm the Director of BCRC for MCLA. That was a lot of acronyms all together. And we are delighted to host this session as an opportunity. As I said, it seems like we see a lot of familiar faces, but some new faces for these discussions that we've had to move us toward dismantling racism. And we thought that at the top of the year, as we're all kind of back into things now, we would take a look back at what we've done and think about what we want to do to move forward, but also to think about some more specificity of the sort of action items and steps we want to take together. What are things that we are most interested in doing? What are the things that will keep us most committed and vigilant in doing this work? Because we all know that we can become sometimes fatigued by it, so we need that motivation. And I think also one of the other things that we are considering is what are things that we haven't thought of? A lot of what we're talking about tonight and the different groups that have been formed are based on a survey that many of you may have taken and participated in. And based on that, which Becky will share with you later, is where we are. So we invited, some of you may have even gotten personal emails inviting you to participate tonight, because what we're looking at is a commitment. All of us on this committee have made a commitment to try and embed what we are doing on a daily basis. And I know that that may sometimes seem daunting, but that's why we're coming together as a collective to support each other. And each of these different groups are meant to help one another support each other in this work. And that's what's most important. So I think we had said, because we're not sure if everybody knows who we are on this group, that I'm just going to go through and maybe have each of us introduce ourselves. You'll probably see us in these breakout groups, so it'd be nice for you to know who we are. So I'm just gonna name the person, and if you could just unmute yourself, say who you are, who you're with, and then I'll go to the next person. So I'm gonna start with Amanda.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Tobin. I'm the Associate Director of Education at Mass MoCA. Thanks.
Blair?
Hey folks, Blair Benjamin. I'm the director of Mass MoCA's Assets for Artists program and one of the members of the Artist Impact Coalition and the Anti-Racism Committee.
Great, thanks. Brianna?
Hey folks, I'm Brianna Halpin. I coordinate the grant and workshop programs with Assets for Artists at Mass MoCA.
Thanks. Molly?
Hey, I'm Molly Rideout, she, her, and I'm also with the Assets for Artists program at Mass MoCA, and I'm a member of the Common Folk Artists Collective.
Thanks. Sweens?
Hi folks, I'm Sweens, also Jessica Sweeney, depending on what hat I'm wearing at one part of the day. I'm a city councilor here in North Adams. I am a member of Common Folk Artists Collective, and I work in various different fields, also go by she, her.
Okay. Becky?
Hi everyone, so I do a lot of marketing for the Artist Impact Coalition, and then also work at Common Folk, and recently started working at Fair and Contemporary Gallery on Mass MoCA campus.
Great. Okay, if there's anyone I missed, raise your hand. Okay. Perfect. So.
We missed Ben.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
I see a wave.
Okay, hi. We were very noisy before. There's Carolyn. Wiley's off screen at the moment. I'm Ben Westbrook. This is Carolyn Clayton, and we are together running the Walkaway House. I'm a blacksmith, and Carolyn is an artist and works for Assets for Artists, coordinating the Studios of Mass MoCA program.
This is Wiley.
And this is Wiley.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Carolyn, Ben, and Wiley. Okay. Is there anyone else I missed on our committee? I'm going through now. Okay, so again, welcome to everyone. We really appreciate those that are joining us again and those that are here for the first time. You know, as we always say, house rules are that we respect one another and that we're here to support one another in the exchanges that we have. So we hope that you keep that in mind. And I will come back at the end of this to kind of bring us back together after our breakout sessions. But I'm going to hand it over to Becky, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the results of the survey that brought us to this point. Becky?
Thanks, Erica. So part of our reflection of 2020, I also just wanted to give a little overview for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with our subcommittee or what we were doing over the course of 2020. So really briefly, just want to cover the fact that this particular subcommittee about dismantling racism in North Berkshire, it formed in March of 2020 in response to countrywide calls to similar action. And the group formed with the intention of sustaining conversation around this work beyond the media, having it being a very foundational part of our community and what we're doing here as artists and various representatives of organizations. And then also to just create a space to talk about what's going on as individuals who make up these larger collectives. So recognizing the role that we all have as members of the community and not just representatives of these larger institutions. But with the hope that with our collective conversation, we can bring what self-interrogation we do, what things that we learn back to the other groups that we are part of. So a brief overview of the conversations that were had in 2020. So in July, we had the first one with MCLA's BCRC and Chris McDonald Dennis as a guest speaker. So that was, like I was saying, understanding our role as individuals. And then later in August, MassMoca's Assets for Artists was the host, and theirs was specifically on interrupting observed racism. So discussing ways to speak up and address things in the moment, whether in our workplace, in our practice, with our families, social media, things like that. After that, MCLA's BCRC did a visual thinking strategy with The City by Vincent Valdez. So that was an opportunity to use an artwork as a vehicle and medium for conversation. And that specifically talked a lot about white supremacy rooted in others' observations. So after that, in October, Common Folk took over the hosting role and did a session on envisioning collective action. So talking about equality, equity, liberation, and justice, how those all work together and how they relate to our actions as collective groups. And then finally, in November, KidSpace at MassMoca hosted our most recent session, and that was in conjunction with the Wendy Red Star exhibition. So very similar in using art as a medium for conversation about these various topics and talking specifically about Indigenous communities, whether in our community or beyond. So following all of these conversations, we conducted a survey of past participants to get their thoughts, and some themes that bubbled up from that were people really valued the opportunity to just talk about anti-racism, white supremacy, the needs facing our local community, in particular with people that they wouldn't normally strike up this conversation with. So this provided a space for them to not only feel like they could talk about it and feel supported in talking about it, but with folks that they might not otherwise have ever met or had the opportunity to talk with. And then beyond that, there also was really strong positive response in utilizing art as a medium, in particular for self-interrogation and focusing on our roles as individuals, bringing back what we've learned to our groups, collectives, organizations. So rising from all of those results was a need to continue creating this inclusive community in North Berkshire, not just virtually, but in person, in daily life and in our organizations that we represent, and have it be in a way that folks feel safe and supported. So there's obviously still a need for folks existing in North Berkshire to feel safer and more supported. So making our efforts maybe more known or more tangible rather than just in these virtual spaces. In addition to that, so I'll just kind of go down the list of these various themes. Next is accountability measures for reforming the structures within ourselves and within our organizations. There was a lot of feedback around that being a potential need. Identifying white supremacist white supremacist practices and its impact on our day-to-day lives. And then lastly, just creating opportunities to celebrate multicultural joy in positive and engaging ways that aren't always framed as issues or problems, and having there be more opportunities for just simple celebration. So I just said a lot of things very quickly, but I did want to give an opportunity for folks who have participated in past conversations and maybe weren't able to fill out the survey or had their own thoughts and feedback on how those events went, and just open the floor. We have about like 5 minutes or so for anyone who wanted to provide their own feedback that we can add to this list. And this isn't all of the responses. This is just a summation and finding of themes. But with that said, I do want to open the floor if anyone did have thoughts on previous events. Or if anyone who hosted a previous event had thoughts that I didn't go over from feedback from other folks.
It looks as though there is a comment that, is there a visual aid written record of the results you can read? Is there somewhere you can see that, Becky?
So I do have it, and I haven't posted any of it yet, but I can absolutely post it. And that is our plan, is to build out a page on the website with everything that we collect. So I'm going to add that to my list of things to add to the website.
And I don't think I mentioned before, but Becky, we were going to share a link for folks to reach out to us too, that we can put in our chat.
Yes. So so the link that we're putting in the chat is, like we were saying, we'll be talking about a lot of initiatives in the second half of this event. And so this is the link to either add your name to a contact list so that there's a way for everybody here to be able to communicate after the fact, or to sign up for the initiative once you've learned more about it and perhaps have an idea of how you might want to get involved. So I'm just posting it there. It's in the chat now in case folks leave early and want to grab it before they leave. And this link will also be available on that website that we were referring to. So folks who weren't able to make it to tonight, or if during the conversation you think of people who would be good to tap into these kinds of initiatives, there will be a place on the Artist Impact Coalition website with all of the results of today's event laid out, and then this form for getting more involved.
Does somebody have the AIC website link handy? Maybe we should drop that in there too.
Yep, I've got it here and I was going to drop it in because, so yeah, this is new. We have a website now. We came together as a group of different people working in different organizations, so we didn't really have our own website, but we have one now. And this link I just dropped in is specifically for these anti-racism conversations, and the reason why it can be useful today is because it lists what all the different categories of the breakout groups are. So just to explain how today is going to work. So you may recall that when you registered for this event, you signed up for like one of 5 different categories of breakout rooms. And so those are available for you to read on the website, but I'll also list them here. If you don't remember which one you signed up for, that's okay, because our amazing Brianna is putting everybody in the rooms that they requested. So you don't have to worry about that. The 5 rooms that we'll be doing tonight, one is focused around Accomplice work. Developing structure of action or accountability and identifying white supremacy in our current practices. And that one is going to be facilitated by Blair Benjamin. The second one will be focused on how we might be able to develop a mutual aid structure, particularly for MCLA students who are individuals of color, and just ways that we can create less of a town gown divide and allow them to feel more welcome when they are here in North Adams. And that one, I believe, will be facilitated by Becky. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we have one that will be a BIPOC-only affinity group. So only those who identify as an individual of color, we ask those who don't to kind of opt out of this. And that will be a group that might be focused around restorative practices, or we'll see kind of what bubbles up out of those conversations. And that one will be facilitated by Erica. Then we will have a group about these monthly community conversations, how these regular convenings can go into 2021, what topics we might want to focus on, and I'll be the one facilitating that one. And then lastly, thinking about kind of intergenerational relationships in North Adams and what like a mentorship program could be, how we could better engage high school and college students in this work alongside us. And that one, I believe, will be facilitated by Amanda Tobin. So originally, you might recall, or maybe not, that you had the option of like signing up for one category and then signing up for a second category. We'd originally imagined this as like 20 minutes in a breakout room and then 20 minutes you can go into another room. We kind of continue to have conversations on that and realize that it might not actually be the best way to have these conversations. So instead, we just want to invite all of you to, you know, you'll get your individual breakout rooms. And if at any point you say, I want to go see what this other initiative is talking about that, or maybe it's just this group isn't quite what I need, and Brianna will be there, and you can tell her what session you would rather get put in, and she'll send you away to that group. So you can do that at any point during these. So we're not going to have a 20 minutes. Instead, we just invite you to explore however makes sense for you. And if you have to leave early, don't worry. Becky's going to send an awesome summary of what we talked about today and all of these, the Airtable link again and more for you or anyone else. And I think that's all I have to say about the way this is going to go, except for facilitators, make sure that we have a good note taker in each group. Oh, that was not long enough. Those were such great conversations.
Yeah, 40 minutes goes pretty fast.
It does go very fast. It looks like people are still coming back in. So this is the time when we kind of come back and collectively share what each of our breakout groups, basically just to kind of to summarize some key points that we can share with other folks that we feel would be of interest or significant in an action item that moves us forward. So I'm just going to go around and I guess maybe if the folks who were facilitators could raise their hand, and then I could, I'll try and remember. But anyone that I like, oh, see how easy this is? Amanda, let's start off with Amanda.
Okay, so Sweens and I facilitated the conversation about mentorships, and a few of the sort of questions we were talking about were, you know, is it worth, or just the importance of a two-way mentorship where young people can advise us as much as we advise them, and they can so often be our teachers, especially in anti-racism work. The question of whether it's important to build a new mentorship opportunity or just identify existing opportunities and connect people to where they are. So knowing that like Roots Teen Center, BART put out a call for mentors in the arts, just that I came across today. And the sort of need, especially for young students of color, to have mentors of color in the Berkshires, that there's sort of a gap in available or people finding each other. And wondering if we can leverage like MCLA or Williams College students in this way for the high school students in the area, or alumni of the schools. And then also the importance of providing opportunities for white students to build relationships and connections with people of color as well. Did I leave anything out, Sweens, or anyone else in our group? Okay.
I think you got it.
Great, thank you. Another facilitator that is interested in, great, Becky?
So my group was the mutual aid support system for MCLA students of color, and our group, it was really wonderful, especially for me as an alum, to be able to talk with folks who are actively working in the campus, as well as other alumni, as well as non-alumni, so seeing it from all different perspectives. And we discussed a lot of programming that's currently in the works and systems that are already in place. So similar to Amanda, what you talked about, really not recreating the wheel, but identifying what is existing and using, you know, our efforts towards amplifying them or finding ways to make them more effective or sustainable. I also just, you know, just learned about a lot of resources that exist that I didn't know about, and seeing a need for the community to know more about them as well. But also what emerged was a really strong need to create more of a sense of safety and well-being on campus itself, that the North Adams community is one thing, and that obviously we all play a role in creating a more welcoming environment in North Adams, but having MCLA be a place where students of color feel comfortable and safe is of optimum priority. And Arlene brought up a really important point too, that the focus should be on retaining students and faculty of color rather than recruiting, especially when it is a very unwelcoming environment for those folks in North Adams. So we had a lot of really good conversation around those topics and had some action items, at least to start with, just sharing the existing resiliency fund that MCLA has in place and identifying ways for donors in the community to contribute to that and support the mutual aid that already exists. And then just continuing to talk with like the advancement office and figuring out ways that the external community can support the work of the internal community and being a more inclusive and welcoming space. Did I miss anything from my group mates? Cool, thanks.
Great, thanks, Becky. Any other volunteers? Great, Blair.
Well, and I'll just pass the mic to Hannah Fisk, who agreed to take notes and say a bit about what we talked about.
Yeah, so we talked about a lot of different things. I think one of the main items was creating a regular, like, small group of well, first we kind of defined what Accomplice is, that it's like active, it's a more active role of pushing things forward in anti-racism work. And then we talked about creating a group that meets regularly and holds each other accountable to goals, and is also a place where white people are holding white people accountable, and can also talk about any questions that come up around their anti-racism work, and any ideas that they have. And it could also be a space for education, or maybe that's a separate space that we create, or it's the space for education and then putting that education into action. And having it be anti-hierarchical so that it's a rotating leadership. Different people are organizing it each time. And then we also talked about, is there a need and a space in the community for anti-racism training, either for artists, for art admins, for the whole community? What would that look like? What's needed? There's different trainings going on maybe at different organizations, but should there be one that's available to the community and open to different people? We didn't get like to a specific goal space, but just kind of having that, and Accomplice training specifically as well. And then we kind of left it at, there's a lot of conversations happening right now within museums and art organizations, and happening between like lower staff members who maybe don't have the power, the leadership power, and trying to push this kind of anti-racism work forward when you aren't in a place of power, and how that can be done. And having those conversations can be difficult at best, and often are much more than difficult. And then we left on how Change Berkshire Cultural Instagram page is going live on Monday. If people don't know, it's off of the Change Museum's Instagram page, which is a place where people can share experiences from all over the world that they've had at cultural organizations that were racist or inequitable, and it's a platform for folks to share those stories. And so there's one that's going live that's just specific to the Berkshires on Monday. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
Great. Thanks, Hannah. Another group?
I can go.
Molly.
So we were the group that was talking about these monthly community conversations and kind of what, where we want them to go in the next year. And we spent a lot of time talking about different audiences that we want to be engaging with, and had amazing conversation with that, thinking about how to engage the businesses in the North Berkshires, or we had a lot of conversation thinking about teens, and so there was kind of some crossover with kind of intergenerational conversations, and how to have, you know, a space that is either welcoming to teens or led by teens, or, you know, both, how we can do something like that. And then there was some like great brainstorming of ways to just like reach more people, talking about like doing promotion on our local access channels and how that reaches groups that might not necessarily hear about things, say, online. But I think a really interesting conversation we had was both the ways that art can act as a vehicle for conversations, but also the ways that art can sometimes, the word art can turn certain people off and feeling like, oh, that's not for me because I'm not an artist, or I'm not engaged with art. I don't really understand art. And so thinking about ways that we might reframe these conversations that still potentially use art or are based in artistic practices, but maybe don't forefront artists as terminology, to potentially be more welcoming to other audiences. Those were some of the things we talked about. I think there was definitely a lot of enthusiasm about bringing in more teen voices to help organize these, so that was something that was personally really exciting. Group, were there other things that you want to make sure we mention?
You got
All right,
it, Molly.
I think that's it for us. Thanks.
Great. Is there another group, or are we the last group? Is there another group? Let's see. Okay. So I guess the last group was the BIPOC group. And, you know, we talked about a lot of the things that we normally talk about. We definitely discussed a lot about our environment, where we are. And we found that we have similar observations that really kind of feed into how we're feeling. And what sorts of things. We didn't really get to what it is we needed. We felt like we definitely needed to be able to have this space to talk. We always need that. But I think some of the things worth sharing are, you know, I think in terms of BIPOC folks, you're always assessing where you are and if you're going to stay, or how it feels to be here. And I think what we realized, we felt that there's a lot of positive change, and we are very encouraged to see that people like the group that is here are coming together to work toward that. And I think we also feel encouraged that folks are willing to make that commitment, because, you know, we talk about this all the time, that there is such a sense of urgency when you see something that is traumatic, that happens to a person of color, and you want to respond, but there's almost as though you want to respond and fix it so that we can move on. But this is it's a marathon, and that we need to pace ourselves and to really look critically at what we're all doing and the role that we play. And so we felt encouraged by that. Just some observations that we had made, that, you know, we've talked a lot about racism in North Adams, and it exists, but there's always these conversations that we're missing out on about the history of diversity within our region. And that often people don't recognize that there have been, you know, different groups of communities that are quite diverse, that have been here for a long time, but they're not part of the conversation. And it takes a lot of energy to reach out to them, but we're here. We're here, and sometimes we feel invisible, but we know that we have a history here, so it's conflicted. And so we often feel like it's important for us to find ways to talk about that, and talk about that history that we have here more often. The themes of gentrification came up, a lot of dealing with what all folks hear about that takes place on social media. There's a lot that gets stirred up on social media in our region, and we were thinking, you know, how we work through that, how we address that. We often feel like there's a lot of history in terms of class issues in our community, and the history of that also in relationship to our neighboring towns, and that almost compounds some of the things that go on within our community. How we move toward the core value, and we had a lot of MCLA people there, so a lot of stuff that we were trying to do at MCLA, but the core value of really embedding diversity, equity, inclusion, and access into what we do on a daily basis, like what that really looks like. And then also the need, which I think kind of goes into what other groups have said, that we need pathfinders, whether it's intergenerational, those that help us to find our way, those that help to establish or identify people that can support us, that we can work with to move us forward, especially for our young people here, our teens and our students at MCLA. I'm sure Williams is not exempt, that there are students there who could benefit from that as well. But I think what I heard a lot of too was this idea that, you know, right now it's about amplifying our contributions as BIPOC members of the community, and encouraging that sort of conversation around that, and encouraging our young folks and giving them aspirations of a more inclusive community. And I think that comes through modeling, all of us doing that. And so we really were talking a lot about that. I'm sure I probably missed something, so I'm going to ask if anybody from my group wants to chime in at all. Okay. All right. So, but I think that is most of what we talked about. And I think that if we were to really look at all of our notes after we finish that there's a lot of overlap in intersection. And I think that that's really what comes out of these sorts of conversations, and that we have to remind ourselves that even though we're all taxed and we're all busy, that after these sorts of programs, usually we feel pretty good. At least we feel like we're working towards something, and that should be enough to bring you back, because hopefully once we leave here, we have some sort of action item we can take with us, and that's individually on a daily basis. So unless there's anything that anybody wants to add to kind of these summaries, I'm going to hand it over to Becky to kind of round us out.
Thanks. Awesome. So I'm just putting back into the chat that link that I shared at the beginning. So this link is for any folks who after today want to get involved in furthering any of the action items that were talked about, or even just want to be added to a directory list. So we'll save, you know, anyone who adds their contact info, we'll save it and share it with everyone else in case, you know, there are connections that you want to make with other folks who have been attending these kinds of events. We realize we've been sort of holding on to all that information, but it would be really helpful, I think, for everyone to know who else in the community is sort of committing themselves to this kind of work and have a various set of skills to offer that maybe you're looking to expand. So feel free to either enter your contact info into that link or sign up for an initiative that you're interested in getting involved in. And it doesn't have to be the one that you talked with today. This was just a beginning brainstorming session. If there was another initiative that you're really interested in learning more about, you can also check that off in this form as well. Molly and I are gonna consolidate everything that was talked about today and post it to the Artist Impact Coalition website, which I'm also gonna put back in the chat. artistimpactcoalition.com. .com, Molly, or .org?
I think it's .org.
Okay, it's new. And we'll share everything that way too, as well as that link to sign up for things. So yeah, we'll make sure all the information is out there. And thank you all so much for coming today and offering your time and your work and your support. It really is appreciated. And yeah, looking forward to working more.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for coming, especially the people that I asked to spend this evening with us and all of the folks that took the time out. So Arlene and Christopher and Alicia and all the people that I see, Mayor Bernard here. I mean, it's really great. I really appreciate it. But I think also as we leave, I just want to mention that all the conversations that you had here tonight, if there was any comfort or feeling that it's inappropriate to talk about this or anything, take that with you. Bring those conversations out with friends that you have that ability to do that with. That's what we're trying to create, a culture around speaking freely about things that we've been taught that we shouldn't talk about, that have brought us to this place. I think that's what we're really trying to create. So I appreciate everybody for taking the time to do that. So have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.